Hi, everyone, and welcome to the virtual Eclipse Community Meetup. I'm your host, Kat Hirsch, and I work for the Eclipse Foundation in Ottawa. I am joined today by my colleague, Roxanne Jonka. If you follow the Eclipse Foundation on social media, you've probably heard over the past couple of weeks about the virtual Eclipse Community Meetup. If you haven't, the idea is twice a month, the Eclipse Foundation will host and produce virtual meetups of this nature using community-driven content to talk about the Eclipse ecosystem. In June, we will be doing a webinar series on the upcoming Eclipse Oxygen release train, so be sure to check it out. To become a member of our virtual Eclipse Community Meetup, just follow the link in the description below and join the growing community of virtual Eclipseans. Everyone is welcome. During today's virtual meetup presentation, you can submit questions in the chat box on the right-hand side of the YouTube Live event. At the end of the presentation, we will reserve 5 minutes to go through those questions with the presenter. So without further ado, I'm thrilled to introduce to you the very first Eclipse Community Meetup presenter. Over to you.
Thank you, Kat. So welcome everyone. I'll share quickly my screen, bring up my one and only slide that I have today. So, yeah, supposedly you can see this.
Looks good.
Yeah. Okay, so today the session will be a sequence basically of tips that I will demo, or what I call the tips and tricks that you see here. So they will be taken out of this Twitter handle, which is our Twitter handle right now for showing daily tips and tricks about using the Eclipse IDE. So the idea behind this was that since now the Eclipse world is growing a bit bigger and bigger, and Eclipse is starting to mean many things, then we came up with the idea of having this nice handle called the Eclipse Java IDE, which basically focuses on using the IDE and tips and tricks of mainly working with Java in Eclipse. So right now, this is mainly driven by me and also Mikhail Isria from Red Hat, and also Nupur Gupta from IBM. But so very quick introduction for myself. So my name is Sopot. I work for Red Hat, and I'm also an Eclipse committer in the Eclipse platform. So I spend my time mostly developing Eclipse itself, but I also lead this effort on the Eclipse Java IDE and showing people the nice tips and tricks. Now, one thing that I want to mention here is that right now we're a fairly limited amount of people which are producing these tweets. So now we also have this hashtag right now, which we use every time that we send out a tweet. So if you have your very own nice tip or trick that you want to show in the Eclipse IDE, just add this tag, and I'll be monitoring this, and also if it looks good enough, I'll be sharing also with a wide community of Eclipse. Right now, until now, so this is relatively new effort, and we're pretty happy about it. We're having quite a big reach with more than 100,000 impressions monthly, and impressions is defined by Twitter as the number of times people see tweets, which is quite nice. But as I said, my ambition is big for this. I want to go into many, many millions, but I cannot do this alone, and the power is there in the crowd. If you follow and retweet something that is interesting for you, that will always help us in getting the message across for these very nice and productive Eclipse Java tips. So I'm not going to spend too much more. I'm not going to spend much more time on this. I'm talking about this, let's say. So I'll show you now so this is basically the Twitter view of our account. Supposedly you can see this, right, Kat?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you can see that.
Okay, so let's start. So I'll show this to you quickly here, and then I will demo it, of course, in the IDE. The first one, I tweeted this yesterday. Very successful. People love this, apparently. This is the nice and famous block selection tool. So this is, let me switch to my IDE. Block selection, there it is, block selection tool. So I'll just go through it. So the scenario is this: you normally do, like if you want to say, let's say a person class, you would do private string name, private integer age, and then you have a Boolean and a profession, let's say. Title, it's probably in tweetles. Now, supposedly you changed your mind and for some very strange reason you want to change this to public. But there might be a case where this makes sense. And the way that you would do it, you would say public and then copy and then paste and such and such. But and this is where block selection is really useful. There is this icon here called, of course, toggle block selection. Shift. The shortcut is Shift Alt A, which is very nice. So I'm pressing now Alt Shift A, and you see the cursor turns into a cross, because the selection now will be a sort of a rectangle. And now I select all of this, and now I start typing public, and it will just work. And then I get out of the block selection again. So you see, this was a fairly simple example of where we could, let's say, use this. You see also the warning went away because it's supposedly unused if it's private. But this is a simple, let's say, example of the way that toggle block selection, of the way that block selection works, but it can have many other applications in your specific cases. So yeah, I hope this one is useful for you. Let's get rid of this guy then. The next one I would show you, this was also quite popular, the full screen one. So I think it was last release. Let me open something. So we had we had quite some feedback from users which wanted to have way more space to develop. And the first one, or the one that I will show you today, is called the window appearance and toggle full screen. This will get rid of the, you see probably this is, they call that trim, window trim, where you see the location of the file here. And if you do that, if you say toggle full screen, the thing becomes basically what it says, of course, full screen. And that was via the menu, but I will be pressing now the shortcut, which is Alt F11. And you see it comes and goes as a full screen. And also this bar here, which is my Fedora time, it goes away. Now, if you're not happy with this and you want more, then you can also hide the toolbar, and you can also hide, see the lower status bar here, the one that way in the bottom of the window. When you hide status bar, see even more space, and you want even more, you can just maximize this guy, and then you have basically the whole real estate. You can also, let me open this with a big file because it makes more sense. And this is basically one of the quite popular features, I have to say, with our users. Let me restore these things, because I don't have a particular love for doing this full screen. Okay, I guess this one was useful also. At least our feedback that we have from here was quite nice, the way that this, and then many people don't know these features are there. This is also one of my main, let's say, motivations to go ahead with this. What do we have next? There's the debugging for kids, which is nice. Not much demoable there. The debugging, the run to line. This is also very useful. So the scenario is like this. Let me see. Breakpoint demo. So I'll go ahead and demo it for you. Let's say you have a main method. By the way, never write down your whole public static void main string args thing. Just type main, do control space. It will show you the template, so you don't have to go through it. And let's say there's the hypothetical case where you just do get the args array length, and then you just do something really dumb with it. And then you just output the results. And then you do this. So now you would normally, let's say, decide or want to put a breakpoint right here. say, yeah, I want to know what is basically happening at this point. And if you do a debug session here, of course, this stopped here. You can see the debug line here. Now, if you just change your mind and say, I want to have the program flow until this line here, this print my bug here, and then you right-click it, and then you say run to line, and then the debugging will keep going regardless of the fact that you didn't do step over or step into or whatever. It will keep going until it reaches the line that you right-clicked and you told it to run to line. This is useful if you have for loops in between. So if you have a for loop which takes 100 iterations, then yeah, you have to step over and step over it multiple times, or just find some way to skip through it. But if you just right-click the line and say, yeah, just run, keep going until you reach this line, if you reach this line, of course, then it's going to just keep going until it comes to a line here. You see here in the console, there's number 1, which is basically happened at this line after it printed out B. And that is, I think, quite useful, at least for my debugging sessions, because I always end up at a case where I want to see the debugger somewhere far from where I set the breakpoint, because the flow wasn't as I imagined it would be. So yeah, I'll wrap this up also. You see here on the left, you have a list of them. I think this should be enough, but I have plenty more if they're not enough. There, this is done. The content assist getter and setter. This is also, I've seen people still doing their getters and setters manually, which was quite depressing, I have to say. So here, getters and setters. Now this is the generation. Let's see. Yeah, autocomplete getters and setters. This is, so again, there are simple examples. Suppose you have name and an age. So if you don't know about this feature, then you would probably also need the getter. So you would start to say public string get name return string and all of that, which is very easy to do, but also very time consuming. You can just do get, and it will propose you to say if you want a getter for age or a getter for name. Just say name. It will give you the getter. Same for the setter. Set name. It will do it for you. And also get age. Set age. And there you have them. This is if you want to do them, of course, individually, or you already have 10 getters and setters and you want to add one, because another way of doing it for the whole, so this is much better than, of course, doing it manually, but this can also become faster if you do a full generation. So it's here in the menu. The source menu has really a lot of nice things. You can generate many things here, but for now I'll just go with the getters and setters. So you just click this, or you can also do a shortcut, which is Alt-Shift-S, which stands for source. And then you say generate getters and setters, select them all, and say OK, and it will just generate everything here, and not individually. So if you want to add a Boolean here, Boolean married, then yeah, this is where it becomes useful to do a getter is married, of course. So I think this is quite useful if you're used to doing the getters and setters manually. This is going to be quite a big help.
And Sopot, I'm just going to interrupt for a quick moment.
Yeah.
Would you be able to make the size of the screen bigger?
Yeah. Okay. How is this?
Yeah, that looks good. Thank you.
All right. I'll go on with the next tip. I'll skip this one. The javadoc. This is really nice. The javadoc one is, I didn't know this myself until some time ago, and Nopur from IBM showed this to me. The javadoc hoover warning. So the scenario here is really simple. Again, suppose you have a method, your own very famous main method, and you have this line in the array list. You see the imports. So here you see this is very common. You have this, if you mouse over the list interface here, it will show you a warning because it's a raw type, and basically it's right, and you might have to basically add a type parameter here. But this is not the point, because if I do it here on the array list, where there is no warning, there is basically type. No, this is the constructor here, of course, and it basically shows javadoc and other useful information. But sometimes the warning just needs to stay there. It's been there for a while. You don't want to change it, but you just want to see the javadoc of this guy. So if you press Control and Shift while hovering it, so now I'm pressing Control and Shift, and you hover this guy, it will ignore basically the warning, and it will keep going and show you the javadoc. So even though there is a warning, if you just want to disregard that one, press Control Shift, mouse over it, like I'm doing right now, and it will show you this nice javadoc with a whole big explanation of what the Java list interface is for. And then, yeah, it's like the normal one. You can go and look at it on the web. The point is that these warnings usually hide the real purpose of the hoovering, and you can bypass them by doing Control and Shift. That was it for this guy. That's it. Next one. Where the variable was declared. Yes. Variable declared. This guy here. Okay, so I'll just comment this out. I don't want to type this from scratch. So this is a very, dumb thing to do, but it suits our purpose. Thing here is very simple. I've declared this variable, or constant called, no, it's a variable, static variable called name. And it's basically a fancy way of saying Sopot, which is my name, but I've made this a bit more complicated. And the scenario that I want to show here is if you have, and you want to use this variable, and say, write down this, and you say name. Now, if you mouse over this guy, it will show you basically the type. It says it's a string, and yeah, it will show you also that it's static. You see the little s there, supposedly, and but this is sometimes not very useful. What is very useful is that if you press Shift while hovering it, you will see the full declaration wherever it's declared. So you see the full private static string name, blah blah blah. And this is very useful if if this constant or variable is in some other class or some other file, which is the example that I have here. So this is still, the same file, but of course it's a different class. But if you do test.name, again, if you just mouse over it simply, then you see only the declaration. But if you press Shift, and of course you see the full declaration here and the initialization of this variable with, even though it's in a different class. It doesn't really matter. It will go wherever that is declared, and it will give you the line of how it is declared and or initialized. So this is, I think, also for me very, very useful in my daily work. That's it for this guy. Probably that should be also useful for you. Next one. Shift. Turning a variable to a field. This is relatively popular, and renaming it in the process, of course. It's relatively popular, but I decided to also show this to you. Turn variables. Pretty dumb example that we have here. Suppose that you have this method, and yeah, by the way, I will also show you if you want to quickly create a method, just type the name, say do stuff, control space. It will propose to create a method stub for you, so you don't have to do private this and that and open your parentheses and whatever. So you just do this. Now add a variable here, a number. Delete this. And I'll do this, double the number equals number times 2. Pretty simple and straightforward. And I want to print this out. Say double the number. Now, in some cases, you want to convert this into a field rather than just leave it a local variable. You could just start copying and pasting and cutting things out and moving them around. Or you can have, by doing control 1, which is the quick assist, by doing control 1, you can ask it to do it for you, convert local variable to field. Double click it. It will give you a chance to rename it in the process, because in some projects or in many projects there is a convention for fields. So in some cases, if you make it a field, you have to put an F in front of it or something like that. So you would have to do this, and you see this is renaming it everywhere. So it gives you also a chance to rename this newly created field out of the local variable. So you just press enter here, and you see the changes in this highlighted occurrences here. So that is also quite useful, the renaming part. If you just don't want to rename it, you just do convert local variable, press escape, and it will just leave it as is. Usually it's in order to make a rename of these variables once you convert them to fields. That's it. This one also. The cast scenario. Variable creation. Very simple scenario here also. I have a method called foo. I do control space to create that. Delete. And we'll just add a simple object here. Now, in some cases, you know that you're expecting here a string, say, or a certain class, and you say, if object O is an instance of string, then you want to do something with it. But then the O object is declared as an object type. So you want to access the string methods of it, like begin or I don't know, index of or substring or this and that, but you can still do O dot. And you see, if you say the substring here, you can actually type it and it will find them for you. It will say, oh, this is string. It's probably a string because it's inside of the instance of block. And then it will also propose you the string methods. You see here the string. This means where the class it's coming from. So here, this is the class it's coming from. This is the return type. So this is the string class where it's coming from. And then if you type enter here, it will cast that automatically for you, which is very useful. Now, if you don't like the way this looks, because it's casting in place, not very, let's say, beautiful to look at, you can just extract this to a local variable, and it should be, let's say, prettier now to look at and with a nicer name. So I think I also use this quite a lot because we have quite some instance objects in our code. So I just do this and then type whatever method like ends with. And then you see it basically automatically converts it because it's in the instance of string. Of course, if it's a different class here, it will change the methods, the proposals. There's gone also. Yeah, this is the one I mentioned. If you have a trick like this and you like to share it with the world, just put an Eclipse tips hashtag on it, and I'll take a look. Now skip static imports. Boolean inversion. This is probably my favorite, I think. Inversion, yes, I'll do them both. There are two very nice Booleans, Boolean inverts. So suppose, again, let's go to our friend here, the main. Suppose for example, I want to have a Boolean here and call it OK. This will be whether the arguments array length is bigger than 0. So basically, whether there are arguments, whether there are arguments in calling this application executable or not. This is pretty straightforward now. And I say system out. Of course, if I run this by default, there's of course no arguments applied, so it will just say false. Now, the funny thing that you can do with Boolean, sometimes it's very useful for you to invert this logic. I can't think of a case right now, because this is a pretty simple one, but there is this thing called invert local variable, and what it will do, I'll just double click. So note that this says bigger than 0, and this is called OK. If I do this, it will become not OK, and this turned from bigger than 0 to less than or equal to 0, and it also changed this to not OK, which of course is double negation, and it retains the logic. And also, after I run this, it will say false still, because it doesn't change the actual logic. It just inverts and double inverts it where you use it, which is adds also by default the word not in front of it. This could be very useful in some scenarios for some code logic in Boolean manipulation. So that's very good to know, I think. Another Boolean trick I wanted to show, it's not really Boolean, but let's see, inverted equals. Yeah, so again, let's start simple. I have a string variable, which initially is null. The same logic. If there are arguments, I'll say string will be true. Okay. Now, at some point further down the logic, I want to check if the string is good or not. So I would say if s equals good, then I'll say okay. Else, I'll say not okay. Now, by default, this thing will come. If I run it right now, it will come with no arguments, and that means that it will not get in here. It will not get into this if. So if I try and run it, it will show a null pointer exception. It will show a null pointer exception at this line here, because since there is no arguments, this thing stays null. So here, this dot here, we have a null pointer exception. Now, you can do an equally good check, but with much better luck on your null pointer exceptions if you invert this. And by invert, I mean if you do a control-1 while having the cursor here in the equals, and it will ask you to invert the equals. So once you do this, then so the equivalence is the same. So it's still comparing s, variable s, with this string literal good. But since this guy can never be null, of course, it's a string literal, then you would never run the danger of having a null pointer exception. And then if I run this, it will just say that it's not okay, but it saves me the null pointer exception. So especially in comparing strings, the equals is very useful. Of course, you can go back if that's useful for you, but that's more or less the way that I use it right now. Even if I forget and do it the old way, because I learned it in school, let's say, and then I can just do invert equals and save myself some very shameful null pointer exceptions, which shouldn't be that difficult to avoid. So this is also, I think, quite an interesting trick from my point of view. This is the one that I just showed you, the not okay thing. The exception one, I'll skip this one. I have it right there. But no, the constructors. This is interesting. Assigning fields. So suppose you have your own class and you want to have constructors in it. Suppose you have only name and age, and then you want to say, so another trick, by the way, if you just are in a white space in where could be a good method in the class, you just do control space, and if you don't have a constructor, it will propose you to create this constructor. So you just press enter here, and the very classical way, and I think relatively slow, would be to do this string name and age, and then go here and do this equals that. I will not go ahead with this because probably everyone of you knows this. Now, what I could also do to make things faster, I could start from the bottom, and I just say, suppose I just created a class, say this, and then I go here in the constructor method, and I say string name and age. And while I'm here between these round brackets, I do control-1. It pops up, and then it asks you to, you want to assign all parameters to new field, and you say, yeah, enter, and then you have all of these guys assigned. This is not specific to the constructors. This can also be for other methods, but I think, so let's say foo, create a method foo, and this could also be for Boolean array. This can also work for other non-constructor methods. Assign parameter to here. So this is quite useful, I think. Another thing I wanted to show you right here is that you can also first declare the fields. So I'll make this a bit more long and say string profession. So as I said, the source method is really very, very useful, and you can also do it here once you have the fields in place. There is a method here, choice here, which says generate constructor using fields. You click this guy, you select the fields you want to use. I'll select all for now. If you select all, and if you do OK, it will automatically generate this for you. And just call super just to be safe. And another thing which could be in the source menu, which is a good place to show right now, is to generate a sort of meaningful toString, because otherwise, if you just do here toString, it will just select the previous one, the super one, which is really useless most of the times. So if you do here source generate toString, that would give you a list of fields which you could use to generate this toString, and maybe also the inherited methods, which for now in this case are not applicable. So you just choose them and you say OK, and it will show you this really kind of acceptable representation of this object using the fields. So if you want to debug this, now this will be a more acceptable way of looking at it instead of just seeing some dumb string when you do toString on an object. So this is also very useful to know. I'll kill this guy. What else do we have? I think I'll show you a couple more before I open it to questions. Method one. This is also one of the nicest ones. I think my second best tip. It is very similar to the shift hoover of the variable. Let me see. Yeah, method shift implementation. Don't have much time, so I'll just uncomment my demo dry runs. Oops. Nicely. So very simple example. You have a variable, a very dumb method that just triples the value, just this guy here. And now if you, and just prints it out, of course. Now if you mouse over, you just see the declaration. You see that it's private, which is this red square, and the S, which is the static. Basically the declaration of this guy, private static int. You mouse over it, and you see that it's private, static, and it's an int. Now, most of the time, you're not that interested in how it's declared. What you're interested in is what it does. So if you press shift while hovering it, same logic as the variable declaration, then you see this nice box here, which you can also focus and resize and all that, which basically shows you the implementation of this method. So whenever you're thinking, what the hell does this method do? I mean, it's probably some other project in some other class, which you don't even know where the class is. You just shift and hover it, and you will get the implementation in place right there. This is also another example, which is from another class. It's basically this breakpoint demo here, this guy, and it has its main method. Now, as I said, if you just mouse over it, if you just hover it, then you see that it's public and static from the icon. But if you press shift and you hover it, then you would see whatever we did there. These little dumb examples to show you the point of the thing. And you see that there's the implementation there, which could be very, very useful to see in place without you having to find where the class is and finding the method and stuff like that. So I think I have time for just one more before I open it to the questions. I'll just pick one here. Oh, this is also very useful. Foo. Let's start with a plain method. Foo. Suppose you have, I'll just copy, I don't have time to go through it again. I'll just do this. So suppose you have a foo method and you have an array of numbers. Very simple. Random numbers there. And you want to do a for, classical way, for int I equals 0, you have I less than 10, I plus plus, and things like that. Now, Eclipse can do this for you, all of it. You just type for, you press Control space, and it will give you these proposals. And you see here on the left, on the right, what that means. So you can say iterate over array, yeah, that's what I want, and it will do it for you. And it goes right into the for loop, and you see it's picking up the numbers, picking up the length, and stuff. There is also a fancier way of doing it, and I can treat it as a collection and just do it for each way, which is. But the important thing is that it automatically picks up the above declared array and does the for here for you. So you're ready to do here the whatever stuff you're planning to do in the for loop. So I think I'm my time's up, and I think it's your turn for questions. Hope this was useful.
Thanks, Sopot. That was a great presentation. I really appreciate it. So I think one of us has the broadcast still open. Sopot, can you just check if it's open in your window?
Okay.
I'm hearing a bit of an echo. There we go. Okay, so we do have a couple of minutes left to do Q&A if there are any questions. I don't see any that have come through in the chat box, but please do take a look. Think about the content. If there's anything you want to ask us now is the time. There's a few minutes. In the meantime, I just want to tell you a couple of updates about the virtual Eclipse community meetup. So like I said, we will be doing a webinar series on the Eclipse Oxygen release train, which arrives June 28th. And that webinar series will be taking place in June. I think it starts the 19th and it will run until the 29th. So details are kind of coming out at the moment for that. So stay tuned and do check out the sessions we do have booked. Also, be sure to check out the Eclipse Java IDE on Twitter and the Eclipse Foundation on Twitter. On the Eclipse Java IDE, there are lots of useful tips that, like Sopot said, get posted daily. So do check that out, follow them. There's a lot of great information available to you. And the last thing I wanted to mention is that if you have any ideas, so as a part of the Eclipse community, if you have ideas for future topics, content, technologies, projects, anything that you think would be of interest to our community, send us a message to marketing@eclipse.org or join the meetup and send us a message there. Virtual Eclipse Community Meetup, link below in the bio. And we're looking for these sessions to be driven by all of you. So your content, it's your time. Let's make sure that we produce what it is you want to learn about. So I'll check to see if there are any other questions. I don't think that there are. If you do have any further questions, feel free to add to the chat box. We will get back to you. And again, thank you, Sopot, very much for your time.
Yeah.
And we hope to see all of you next time.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, take care.
Until next time.
Bye-bye.